Yeah, that's the angle. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know a lot of you have especially requested me doing a video on Silesian folk magic, and that is in the works. However, I want to do the topic the justice that it deserves, so it's going to take a bit more time. I'm in university right now, the semester has been kicking up. Yeah, I don't have a lot of time on my hands, so that video is coming, just not yet. So instead what I'm going to be talking about today are grimoires slash books of shadows, what they are, and especially how you can personalize and create your own one. I'm not going to go in depth into where the terminology of grimoire and book of shadows comes from. However, there's a really good informational post made on the term book of shadows by 𝔬𝔬𝔬𝔨𝔬𝔨𝔬𝔬 and I'm going to link that down below. When you first enter the witchy online sphere, you will notice a lot of people talking about grimoires and books of shadows, and what they usually mean when they say stuff like this is some sort of record for their own personal magical practice. They write their spells in there, what their deities are like, experiences with their deities, what they found out in their research, and plant associations, maybe, stuff like that. And these records often come in shapes of notebooks, sketchbooks even, or online documents, binders, stuff like that. And what you also see is a lot of people online talking about their struggles with this record-keeping system, meaning that they often will start a grimoire, which I'm going to be referring to this record as a grimoire for this video. They will start a grimoire and then sort of lose interest or figure out that they cannot really work with this system too well. They stop writing in it and they just push it to the wayside and ignore it and maybe buy a new one or never touch a grimoire ever again. So if you fall in that category, or you feel that you might fall in that category, I'm here to kind of help you with that. I'm going to be talking about my journey with my grimoires and how I kind of dealt with these struggles and how you could maybe also be inspired by that and make it your own. So this is my first ever grimoire. I think I bought this in 2014 or 2015 in Wales and Cardiff. And if you're a Doctor Who fan, you will recognize this book. This is a kind of replica of River Song's journal. And at first, this book did not start out as my grimoire. I kind of used this as a sketchbook and dream note-taking journal. And you'll see that this kind of sketchbook theme is something that reoccurs in my grimoires. And this is a large factor that led me to actually finishing them. It first starts out with like very unorganized, not informational things. This is just some sketches that I took from my dreams at the time. And I experimented with some mixed media in here. I used acrylics, I used water paints, I used basically everything that I could get my hands on at the time. I also pasted leaves in here and stuff that I took from the real world, and I did not really have grimoire in mind when I started this. I only slowly started to incorporate more witchy things, quote unquote, here pretty late in the book, and this is like my first kind of witchy page that I have here. It's on crystal balls, and even here you can see that I kind of made it more artsy, like the art was in the foreground and the actual informational stuff more in the background. This is kind of how everything started out, and back then I did not really have a specific system in mind when writing this. I just kind of wrote whatever information I came across down. What I found really helped me is that I kind of incorporated my passion for creativity and creating art with research. So I kind of did some pretty artwork that I wanted to do and kind of satisfied that artsy part of my brain, and then got to do the more research, academic heavy part of my brain. So I kind of merged these two interests within this book and the books that follow. Now, what you'll see here is that for each kind of topic that I talk about, I have a different art style. Like I tried out different things, I pasted things in here, I cut stuff out from magazines, and I really got creative with how I would kind of design this. But what you'll see is the first time I talk about the 5 elements in here, I kind of go with a theme of a title page and then the information on here, and then I kind of repeat this style for the duration of this chapter. And this is kind of the first instance of me developing a note-taking system. So you'll see that in later stuff I kind of go by chapters. I kind of draw a title page and then go into the informational stuff on here. And you know, don't be afraid to kind of mess things up. I think that's a thing that a lot of people struggle with, of maybe tarnishing their really pretty notebook that they bought. And I'm here to tell you that for me, it was kind of part of the process to mess up, and it could be also for you. So I did not have a big emphasis on making this book look very pristine or very old. I kind of glued things in here and pasted them the way I wanted to, the way things made sense to me. And you will also see that the system that I developed, which I kind of kept for later purposes, always comes with a artsy title page, and then I will on the next page kind of have a informational spread on what this chapter in my book is going to be about and general information. And after that I went in and kind of wrote down more specific information for this chapter. For example, in this chapter I talk about deities, and as you saw, I had a title page for this chapter, and then I talk here on what deities even are, and then I kind of went in and wrote down a bit of information on deities that interested me at that time, or that I wanted to know more about, or that I heard of previously. And my theme for this was texts that I typed on the computer, printed them out, and then I kind of tried to have a theme for each deity that kind of related to that deity. So for example, for Seth, I kind of glued a bit of sand in here. For Osiris, I kind of tried to replicate kind of the stuff that you would wrap mummies into. For the Morrigan, I have a black feather here because, you know, crow goddess and all. And this kind of continued into my next chapter on magical creatures. The artsy theme that I made here kind of revolved around washi tape, as you can see. So again, title page, information on what the chapter was going to be about, and then I kind of decorated my pages with washi tape and talked about different magical creatures, land spirits, and even cryptids. So I talk about vampires on here, ghosts on here, and I talk about shadow figures, which were also kind of seen in my family, but that's another story. For my section on astrology, I used a lot of watercolors, I used a lot of blues to kind of highlight stuff. And then of course, I think every witch kind of has a page like this in their grimoire. There I talked about the Wiccan Sabbats. Even though I was never Wiccan and Wicca did not really interest me, I at least wanted to have a chapter devoted to this. So I have the Wheel of the Year here, again, what that is about, and then as a theme I chose to kind of have some images behind my writing that represent each holiday. And this is really where everything started out and where I started to do my research. Now some of you might be confused because I'm not a Wiccan, I'm not a New Agey, I'm a German folk magic practitioner, and the things that I just showed you weren't necessarily related to that, and that's because I kind of wanted to research every given topic that I saw floating around in the witchy online sphere to kind of have a broad knowledge of what I was getting myself into. But you will see a lot more stuff related to German folk magic in my later grimoires, where I kind of went back to my own roots. Now this is my second grimoire. This is by Paper Blanks, this notebook. Which I really like is that These clasps here are magnetic, so your book will always be secure. It's hardcover, and if you buy this specific book, the pages are going to be blank. And here I kind of really went with this theme that I developed in my first grimoire and used this all throughout this book. Like you'll see here, my chapter on plants and herbs, again, title page, informational page, and then I talked about each of the herbs. I wrote down their magical associations. I wrote down when they grow, where they grow, how to harvest them, how to prepare them, their medicinal properties, their astrological associations, and stuff like that. And I did this for many herbs that can be found in my region, and maybe you would be interested in making a chapter like this with your local flora as well. Now in my third grimoire, I kind of go off this beaten path because over time this system of only having one art style and then using that for the duration of a chapter felt kind of like it was holding me back creatively. So in this grimoire I tried to steer away from that a bit with more or less success, and to this day this is my least favorite grimoire because there isn't a lot of good information in here. I was kind of catapulting myself into the times of my first grimoire where I was trying to have a specific art style for each of the pages. And then we get to my current grimoire, and you will see that this is not a notebook. This is like a real actual book with stuff already written in it that I kind of repurposed as my grimoire. So I took this book out of my grandmother's shelf. She said that she wouldn't read this anymore and she wasn't interested in keeping it, so I repurposed it. If you do this, you will get a grimoire for free, but as you can see, this book wasn't really made for a lot of artwork, and the pages and the entire book are kind of warping. At this point, I am about on page 200-ish, and this book has 400 pages. So the first 200 pages already warped themselves to this thickness, and I can't imagine what will happen with the last 200 when I'm through. So be aware of that. So this was a quick tour of my own grimoires and how I created my own note-taking system, and I wanted to kind of leave you with a few prompts for your own grimoire if you are more in the artsy niche as well as I am. So as I already said, researching your local flora, your local plants, your local herbs can be really beneficial, and I would highly recommend you doing that. And you can do this in the way that I did, where you maybe paint the plants and herbs that you're researching, or you could also print out pictures of the herbs, or even better, you could find them in your own surroundings and glue them into your book. Another point would be exploring your own magical heritage, and by that I mean not just maybe the folk magic that your family or ancestors would have practiced, but also your culture, the stuff that you grew up around. How does your identity play a part in your magic? And you could include stuff like recipes for some of your favorite holidays. You could try to take a needle and thread and embroider the pages with maybe a traditional embroidering motif, or glue an embroidering motif onto a page and kind of talk about that. And these things don't necessarily have to be witchy, they have to be of you, and pretty quickly you will see how these things can relate to your own personal witchcraft practice. This might sound very abstract right now, but trust me, if you just get started, you will quickly notice these kind of connections and patterns. You could also work with your dreams like I did in my first grimoire, where you paint or draw your dreams or express them creatively on the page in a way. You could take note of different characters or situations that pop up, dreams that reoccur, and you could also analyze them and see what themes pop up, or see if a certain type of dream always reoccurs during a specific period in your life or season maybe. And talking of seasons, you could work with the seasons in your grimoire. Each of us experiences the seasons very differently depending on what climate we live in. And you could take note of things that change around you based on the season, not just the nature, but also on the people. And you could work that into your grimoire. You could maybe glue the first plants that grow in your area in the spring in there. You could melt a bit of snow water and use that to kind of wet your paintbrush and paint a picture in there. If you live in an area that's maybe tropical and experiences dry and wet periods, you could kind of see what plants pop up during the wet period and what is still alive during the dry period, and work that into your grimoire. And don't be afraid to be kind of messy. You could maybe incinerate a page or rip pages apart and glue them back together in another way, and you could really let your creativity flow with that. If you're comfortable with that and know how to do it safely, you could maybe even work a drop or two of your own blood or other bodily fluids into your grimoire to kind of give it that personal connection. You could even use your hair in some ways. Again, maybe if you take a strand of your hair and kind of braid it, you could use it also with a needle and a thread and work that into your grimoire. On witchy social media, a couple of months ago, it was kind of a trend to feed an AI image generator the names of your deities and see what this AI would think this deity looks like. And you can kind of do the same thing in your grimoire. You could paint a picture of what your deity or your ancestors look like to you. And you could do this really intuitively. It doesn't have to resemble a person. It could resemble a combination of different colors interacting with each other. It could look like a place or some sort of building structure. It could look like a flame. It could look like you just drenching your page in a lot of water and letting it dry again. It is more about representing the feeling that this deity or spirit or whatever invokes within you, rather than giving the viewer a one-to-one correspondence to what you see in your mind. And I hope that these prompts kind of helped you along in your practice and got your creativity a bit more going. And if you have any more questions, comment them below, and I'll see you next time. �𝔬𝔢 𝔨𝔬𝔫𝔨𝔶𝔢𝔫𝔫